365 with Daniel, your daily dose of inspiration.
Rolf Potts is a writer. His book, Vagabonding, An Uncommon Guide to the Art of Long-Term World Travel, has had an incredible success. Besides that, he also reported from more than 60 countries for brands like National Geographic, The New Yorker, New York Times Magazine, and many more. Let's hear his answers.
To sort of expand your life and expand ideas of what it's like to live. And so this book isn't even out yet. It's my friend Colleen edited it, and it's just a collection of American travel writers. I think it's international people talking about meeting strangers and what it's like and what it's like to remember these people. But yeah, I always read about 8 different books at once, and that's one of them.
Okay, that's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
What would you put on a flyer that would be seen by the entire world?
What would I put where?
On a flyer?
On a flyer that was seen by this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess this is in keeping with what I write about in Vagabonding, but I've been reminded of it by the new book, which is basically time is all you own. That I think we can get caught up in so many things about what we own or don't own, including, things and people, when in fact time is how life happens. Life plays out in terms of how we spend our minutes and our hours and our days and our months. And I think people forget that sometimes. There's some very wealthy, rich people who aren't happy. They're not spending the time in the way they want. They're trying to become more successful, even though they have more money than they could spend in 100 years. And yet they're still stuck in this pattern, and they're not realizing that time is all they own, that they keep making more money and they're not getting any happier. So it doesn't just have to be about money, but often, at least in the United States, that's how it is. People get obsessed with making more money, but they don't know how to spend their time. So that would be on my flyer.
Cool. Here's a funny one.
Okay.
Who is your favorite cartoon character and why?
My favorite cartoon. It's funny. My wife and I were just talking about cartoons this morning because she's about 8 years younger than me. So she watched different cartoons when she was a kid. She watched slightly different cartoons than me. Let me think.
Sure.
Just because I think we watch cartoons more when we're kids, and it's been a while since I was a kid. So, yeah, well, I'm tempted to say Snoopy because Snoopy was popular, if you know Snoopy, when I was a kid, but I don't know if I was really that wild about Snoopy. Let me think. Have you heard of yeah, no, I have the song to Fraggle Rock in my head because I was joking about that with my wife, but that's not even a cartoon. That's a Muppet movie. That's like a puppet TV show. I don't know if I have one. I might have to email you later and tell you if one pops into my head. I can't think of a cartoon character. I mean, it seems like I should, but I can't think of one.
Let's carry on, and if it comes, it comes. If not, not.
Okay.
What fear did you overcome, and what did you learn from the experience?
I think the most important fear I overcame is sort of that fear of not doing what I dreamed of doing when I wanted to do it. When I was younger than you, even again, it's that conundrum of what happens when you're out of university and society is telling you to do what you want, what you should, you should become responsible and employed and make a lot of money and settle down. When I was young, I was just really worried that I would never. What I wanted to do, I didn't want to get a job. I wanted to travel. I wanted to get short jobs so I could make money to travel. And it took me about 3 years to overcome that fear. I really had to think about it a lot before I was able to give myself that chance to travel. And it turns out that I didn't need a lot of money to do it. I just needed to take what money I had and travel. And so my very first vagabonding trip, I was 23 years old. I went with a friend. And in a way, I went with a friend just so that I couldn't cheat, so that I couldn't not do it. My friend kept me accountable. I knew that if I
Yeah.
if I went with a friend, then I couldn't say, yeah, no, never mind. He'd say, well, wait a second, we're going to travel, right? So
We're doing this. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's one thing that I still advise people to this day, is that having a friend can help you accountable. Sometimes if you have a goal that makes you nervous, then it's harder to not do your goal if your friend is there, because you're almost more afraid of telling your friend that you want to quit than you are of quitting your goal. So that worked out pretty well for me.
Okay. Okay. Um, I guess like the idea of making it public, it's yeah, you're committing yourself. So yeah, I understand. I understand. Good
Yeah,
one. I will.
it's harder to not finish. It's easy to
Mhm.
not finish. It's easy to have a goal in your head, but then once
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
once it
yeah.
comes out of your mouth, and you've told people about it, and you're bringing people along, then it's harder to quit, and it's totally worth it. So even though I traveled with a friend my first vagabonding trip, I most of the rest of the 10 or 20 years I had traveled alone, because I had that confidence. I got over that fear by traveling with a friend the first time.
Yeah. If tomorrow, you could meet one person that you haven't met, who would it be? Why? And what would you talk about?
Living or dead?
Both.
Okay. Well, you know, my cheat question is always an obvious one, like, to meet Jesus or the Buddha or something, just because they've so many years of philosophical thought has been influenced by these religious figureheads. But that's true. I mean, even in my new book, I quote the Jesus and the Buddha quite a bit, just because there's this. I think people who lived thousands of years ago that we're still reading today, um, something philosophically they got right, because their ideas have not died yet. Uh, but I probably couldn't speak. I need a translator. I can't speak Aramaic or whatever language the Buddha spoke. So yeah, I think also, there's ideas of first half versus second half of life concerns. And you're a first half of life guy. You're in your 20s. I'm 51 now, so I'm a second half of life guy. Um, and I think sometimes when you're younger, you want to meet your heroes, you want to meet people who inspire you, and then when you're a little bit older, you just sort of want to meet your neighbors and meet the people you love, and you want your parents and your in-laws to live as long as possible, so you can spend more time with them. So I think, philosophically, I would meet these great religious thought leaders like Jesus or the Buddha. Whereas in real
Yeah.
life, I'm excited to spend more time with my dad, who's in his 80s, or walk down the road and say hello to my neighbors, because that is that's sort of what I'm grateful for these days.
Mm. What is something that most people learn only after it's too late?
I think it's that idea of loving the moment. It's that
Mm.
idea that I should probably talk about this more, just because really that you spend your 20s worrying about what you're going to do in life, and then you spend your 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s wishing you were still in your 20s, right? I think there's something
Vicious circle.
the vicious circle, yeah. So I think, people don't realize until it's too late that life again is in the present moment, and that there's always good and bad. There's always ambition. We're always learning, but the only life we have is the life we have right now. And so I think they spend years being unhappy because they think happiness is only something that's in the future. Uh, and that sometimes they realize they were happier before they were successful, or they were happier, back when they thought they were not happy. So I think just keeping perspective, and just realizing that it's not good to waste time worrying about bad things from the past, or hoping for good things for the future, but just finding ways to make the past and the future accord with what's happening right now, and living the best life you can.
Yeah, so like being in my late 20s, it's the idea would be to also celebrate, right? Not
Mm.
only be in the future and think, well, I'm gonna do that and that and that and that. Also, like celebrate what's going on now, what's gonna happen in, I don't know, maybe tomorrow, not in 2 years or 5 years in my career or stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and be
it
be
makes
grateful.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Here's one. If you could keep from your material stuff only what fits in a backpack, what would it be? And I think you have some insights.
Yeah, I do. I do. About 12 years ago, I traveled around the world with no luggage, and and so I actually know the answer to this question is that you don't really need anything. You just need enough to keep yourself alive because the world is so exciting. There was
Mm,
actually I did a video blog and I did some writing. So I traveled with a cameraman and of course I needed a toothbrush and other simple things. But really, what I learned when I started traveling with no luggage, I just had some things in my pockets. I had a vest with a pocket where I could put extra clothing and things like that. And at first, I was nervous that it would be hard. But after 1 week, I realized that it wasn't hard. That basically it was hard for about a week, and then I got used to it. I would just wash. I had two sets of clothing, and I would wash one pair every day, dry it overnight, and then wear the other pair the next day. And I didn't miss anything. And I realized, I went to Paris, I went to Morocco, I went to South Africa, I went to Thailand, I went to New Zealand, and I realized that life is really not about what you take with you; it's what you do. It's not what you have in your bag; it's what is in front of your eyes. And I know that that's pretty glib of me to say, and that there are certain uses for material possessions. But I think a great thing about travel is that even if you love material possessions, eventually when you travel, you're going to get sick of carrying them around. And so travel really helps you realize what's important. You know, I'm in my house right now. There's no way I can carry even a tiny percentage of what I have in my house. And so you have to decide,
yeah.
what do I want to take? If I'm going to travel around the world for a few months, what am I going to take? In my case, I realized I didn't need much. I was in my late 30s when I did that. And I realized that once I was traveling, I just needed enough to stay clean and have enough money to pay for things. Um, so yeah, that's it. And I think for your listeners, this could be a good experiment. That's one great thing about travel is that travel, it repositions your relationship to what you own, and that you can't travel with everything you own. So what you take in your little backpack is going to force you to decide what's going to be important for you for those few days or weeks or months that you travel. And that's one gift that travel gives us, is just realize that what we own is not as important as what we do.
Yeah, it's a bit profound, if you go besides the like just the material stuff, if you do like an exercise, it's really profound. And as you're saying, it's a good exercise to
Yeah.
imagine it and see how it feels, at least not necessarily do it. Maybe feeling it could be a first step. Yeah. Um, if you could know the absolute and total truth to one question, what question would you ask?
I think this is a question that you would answer at different times, at different times of life. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to know um, when I'm going to die, or what the afterlife looks like, or anything like that. Um, the absolute truth to one question. I think also that people oftentimes they find, I'm gonna have to cheat on this question too.
Yeah, yeah,
They want to know, why are we here? What's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of this? Because you go through life and it keeps changing as you get older, and then
yeah,
then I think that really it's less a meaning of life than the experience of living. And that oftentimes it's a process and it keeps changing, and that is the in a way, I don't want to know the truth to those sorts of questions, because if
mm,
you let it, life can keep surprising you. If you realize that, like when I was about your age, a little bit older, I started to get my first success as a writer, but I wouldn't want to be that age anymore. It keeps, I'm glad that life keeps changing, and I keep having new challenges, and some bad things happen and some good things happen.
mm.
Uh, so I guess I'm not answering your question, but I think sometimes the truth is in not knowing the truth. That sometimes not knowing what's going to happen, not having the answers, allows you to explore the questions a little bit. That
Yeah,
the questions, revisiting the questions, are important than having an answer that might not be as relevant in 1 year or 10 years. So
Yeah, as you're saying, I think like change is very, it feels very natural, you know, and when you embrace it, for sure, it's, I guess it's even better instead of resisting it and saying, "Oh, I don't want this to change" and stuff. But it's probably gonna change, even if you like it or not.
well, I think some cultures are better. I don't know how Romanian culture is, but I know that some cultures are better at acknowledging change and aging in life. Like in India, some cultures in India, you didn't, as you get older, you take on a new name. You know that,
Mm.
or like in China, you have more respect. America is a very youth worshiping culture, and so people. I'm 51, so people guys who are 51 worry about they try to live like they're 27 or something. When in fact it's a blessing. It's exciting to get old and to change as you age, because nobody stays 27, 28, or even
Yeah,
51
it's a bit,
forever.
it's a teenager dream, I think, this
Yeah.
idea of always being young.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, I agree. Yeah,
it's very American, and it's nice, but it's also self-defeating because nobody can stay
yeah,
young. And so
yeah, it's
I
not
think
sustainable. Yeah,
it's not sustainable. And so I think changing in such a way that you can find joy in being a person who grows older, that's key. And that's something that like American culture in particular could do better, because the older cultures like China and India do a little bit better job of not forcing old people to pretend to be young, to realize
mm,
that change is a good thing. But it not just change. Well, again, it's that first half, second half of life thing. You spend the first half of your life really becoming yourself, and the second half of your life enjoying yourself. And you can't really enjoy yourself unless you realize that age happens, and you have to adapt
yeah,
to become this older person with new relationships at some point. You're a younger person relating to older people, and then you're an older person relating to younger people. So
true, true. A more practical question: what do
okay.
you do when you can't focus?
Well, the fast answer is I drink coffee. That's
Coffee.
like
Okay.
caffeine helps me focus. And in fact, here in the United States, it's morning, and I'm caffeinated. So um,
Good timing.
yeah, 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 yeah. I think also eliminating distractions. Uh,
Mm.
like I don't even listen to music. My wife can listen to music when she works, but I eliminate music, eliminate
The
things like
social
social media.
media,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you're mentioning. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's rare these days to do one thing at a time. Um,
Mm.
and so I think sometimes it's a matter of reminding myself, oh, yeah, you should probably do one thing at a time. When I'm working, like when I was writing on my new book, the worst thing I could do was having too many distractions, doing anything that wasn't tied in to what I was supposed to do. And I don't know what it was like to live 100 years ago, but I feel like there were fewer distractions. You sat in your
Yeah.
room and you had a piece of paper or a typewriter and you wrote your book. But now, even when I was writing this new book, I would think, "Oh, I want to research this author. Or I want to look into what this word means in Sanskrit." And then pretty soon I'm doing something that has nothing to do with what I'm supposed to be doing. So I think focus is a matter of doing one thing at a time and reminding yourself that multitasking is not working. It's literally the opposite of work. It's a way of feeling like you're working without actually doing what you're supposed to be doing.
These days, do you journal these days?
I do. Actually, I haven't journaled in a while because I was pretty busy. I've been going through deadlines
Yeah.
on my book. Uh, yeah, but I journaled. It was funny. I journaled almost every day since the pandemic, since COVID. And so it's fun. It's like the journal is not that philosophical, but I sort of have a document now of not only what the world has been like as it's changed so much with the pandemic, but also it was the time I met my wife. So I have very
Mm.
detailed times about this time in my life when love came into it. So I want to return to my journal because it's a good exercise. Are you a journaler?
Recently, I mean, I've had huge off and on periods,
Hmm.
but now I'm getting back to it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty
So
good. I don't say that I wouldn't say that everybody has to do it, but it's a good way of self expression and sort of exercising
yeah,
reflection
yeah,
on
yeah, yeah.
on your
It
days and things
quiets
like
the
that.
mind also.
Yeah, yeah.
In my case, at least,
Yeah, yeah,
too many thoughts.
yeah.
Um, what's a belief that you hold, which many people disagree with?
A belief that I hold that many people disagree with. It might be just that theme that time is all you own, you know? And I'm not
Mm,
sure that people are. I think philosophically people can say, "Oh, sure, yeah, time is what you own." But I think oftentimes in practice, nobody lives like time is what, is what we own. People really, we waste a lot of time. And it feels like all my answers are falling into the same thing because even multitasking is a way of wasting your time. You have time where you're supposed to complete a task. Well, work on the task. Don't figure out what's happening on Twitter and, text your mom or whatever. Work on one task at a time. And so I really think that the not that I'm perfect. I'm still trying to improve my approach towards being rich in time. But one reason why it's hard to remember to be rich in time is that just people don't live in a time rich way. They think about money, or they think about material possessions, or they think about things that aren't important. They think of entertainments. They think of keeping their distractions. Yeah. So it's a belief that I have. I often waste my time, but I'm trying to remember, just that life is what I have. Life is what I have right now. So I'm going to keep trying.
yeah, there's also this not old, but let's say, yeah, movie with I think it's Justin Timberlake,
Okay.
maybe, and I think it's called Time actually, or something like that. And the idea is that all people have their time here, so they go to the job and they get paid in hours and stuff, and they do this stamp. And
Yeah.
then he finds a guy from like a rich future kind of technological like city, and he had hundreds of years, and
Uh
the
huh.
guy was like suicidal, and the guy transfers his fortune to the character that Justin Timberlake plays, and then you might enjoy it. I'm not sure.
I'm
Would you,
and
will you,
and you're sure it's Justin Timberlake? I might write this down.
yeah, you can check the trailer. I think it's actually Time or something like that. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I can also email it to you
Sure. No, I've never heard of
after.
it, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah, with this theme of time, I think you might enjoy it.
Yeah.
Okay, we reached the final question,
Okay.
and is there any exact method that leads us to what we want or dream about?
I think the answer is no, but the best method the best method we have is just focus and patience and self-belief, I think there's a lot of ways that we can be distracted from being the person we want to be and achieving the things we want to be. And sometimes those distractions can come into what society is telling us about how to be successful. Again, that's why we have all these unhappy rich people, at least in the United States. Um, and so I really think patience, focus, and belief is important. Just sort of
Mm,
getting more information about yourself and about the world, and knowing that nothing happens overnight, and that what you consider success today might be different in 10 years. And so I think the more I've talked about this before, we should have sort of success management. We should know that success, even when you get success, sometimes that success needs to be understood and managed in a way. So I think if you're reflective and patient and focused and you have belief in yourself, then you can sort of know not only how to be successful, but who this person is who is becoming successful. It's sort of self-knowledge, and it requires just patience and openness to the world, and maybe even humility, just knowing that there's a lot to learn, and that listening is as important as talking.
were there periods where, let's say, you felt you were the only one that was believing in something that you're trying to do or achieve?
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, I still feel that way sometimes.
mm,
And I think too, I'm a writer, I'm an author, and sometimes, um, I mean, my new book will be my fifth, and it's not like I completely base my pride in all of my books, but it comes and goes. That sometimes you're feeling great because you have a book that people are excited about, and you're hearing about, and um, and then sometimes you don't hear it all, and you wonder if you're just sort of shouting in an empty room.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that even the middle decades of one's life has peaks and valleys. And there'll be times when anybody, no matter what level of success they achieve, they feel really successful, and other times where they feel like they're like completely alone in the world and nobody understands what's happening. Um, so yeah, and I think that's a good experience to have. I think it would be. I think it was the American novelist Donald Barthelme said that ongoing success is almost as meaningless as ongoing lack of success. I may have been misquoting, but I think having that experience of not feeling like you belong or like you're successful helps you appreciate those moments when you do.
Mm. Cool. What a great way to end. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot, Rolf.
you bet.
Yeah.
You bet.
We reached the end of the episode. Our host Daniel is always searching for new guests. If you have any people in mind that you want to see in the podcast, please share the names via social media. Want to support our journey? Please review, share, and subscribe to our social channels and help us inspire more and more people. See you in the next episode. We reached the end of the episode.